it here. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for tonight's session. It's our last Wednesday session, actually. Most of the rest of them are on Thursdays from this point forward, apart from one special one that we're going to run in June for you. Tonight, I am delighted to welcome Katie Fitch from DocsPlus, also known as Cricksoft, who is going to give us a bit of a demo of their programme, but also talk to us about how the programme can support and inspire struggling writers. This is because lots of you ask, what can I use in exams? What, access arrangements, what programs can we use, etc. And this just happens to be one of those products that we're aware of that perhaps you're not aware of. So over to you, Katie. I'm going to mute myself. If you need anything, do shout.
All right, lovely. Thanks everybody for joining me. I'm Katie. I'm an ex-teacher and SENCO, and I'm now a senior education consultant here at Cricksoft. So I work with lots of schools who are interested in our products, perhaps just starting to use them, really sharing what we can offer you in terms of our curriculum support. Now, some of you might be familiar with DocsPlus, perhaps some of you it's completely new to. So DocsPlus has been around for about 4 to 5 years now and really came out of our work with primary schools in our award-winning Clicker software. And some of you that have got children that come up from primary to secondary may well know of learners that have used Clicker. So based on the back of Clicker's success and feedback from secondary schools who really just wanted to know why Clicker's support ended and all of a sudden children hadn't got such a great way of supporting their writing, we developed DocsPlus for the secondary school and young adult market. So now DocsPlus for many learners can become not only their day-to-day curriculum support, as we see with Clicker, so supporting learners through their curriculum writing, but also moving with them through into students who perhaps have access arrangements around readers and scribes. DocsPlus can function in exam mode and become what is their usual way of working. And I'm sure lots of you that have students with access arrangements are very familiar with that term, usual way of working. So where we transition from something that's used as a classroom tool and can then be used within exam mode. So what I'm going to do this afternoon is really show you DocsPlus working in those two scenarios. So how DocsPlus can be used as a day-to-day curriculum writing tool, and how we can then move into support around readers and scribes, obviously removing that element of human reader, human scribe, because we're replacing that need with technology that students are quite often more familiar and confident using. So what I'm going to do to begin with is start to think about the pre-writing stage, actually the planning stage, because it's great asking our children to write and produce text, but the step before that actually needs to be them generating ideas. So what we're looking at on the screen at the moment is DocsPlus working on my laptop. I'll talk a little bit about at the end about how licenses can work and on different platforms. But what we're going to start looking at is we're going to start by looking at what we call a workspace. You might want to call it a mind map or a visual organizer. But the idea for this is it gives students a way to collect and gather ideas before they begin their piece of writing. So what I've done here is I've just started gathering my ideas, vocabulary around my writing topic, which is going to be migration. And you can see that what I've got on my workspace are some clusters of words, some sentence starters, some individual text that I think is going to be helpful to me as I build up my extended writing. And with my workspace along the top, I've even started to segment my ideas as I build them together. So you can see on this tab, I've got my overview, but on my next tab, I'm going to move more specifically into some of those push and pull factors that might affect migration. And you can see that not only have I got text, I can also add charts, tables, diagrams, picture images as well to support me as I gather my ideas prior to writing. So let's just quickly sort of develop this workspace a little bit more before we move into our writing task. So I'm going to start by adding on a couple of text boxes. Simple to do this because I've got a user-friendly menu on the left-hand side. So I'm going to add on a blank text box just by clicking and dragging. And you've got the choice there, actually. I've used the square boxes. You could have round boxes. You can have bubbles. You can have whatever style you want. So I've added on my 2 text boxes and I can join them together. Again, starting to make connections in my thinking and learning here. And when I want to add text into the box, if I just click into the box, I'm then ready to write. So let's just pop a couple of sentences in here. We'll say migrants counteract a low birth rate. And in this one, we'll pop some more text there. So I've allocated those to the different parts of my workspace. Can also add pictures and images. So if we want to add that in there to give me some visual reinforcement or to prompt some further ideas, you can add in images really simply. If you've got them saved into a folder, just locate your folder. Or something that I particularly like, you can go straight over to the internet. So all I've done here is hopped over to Google. I've done a little search for the flag of Turkey, and I can simply click and drag this down into my DocsPlus workspace and drop it wherever I want to within that board. So, and again, I can resize it now and join it together. I can move a couple of these around to help me with my organisation. So I've started to generate all of those ideas. This might be me working independently. There might be times when teacher has this on an interactive whiteboard and we're doing a collective gathering of ideas prior to writing. I might be using this in an intervention and nurture group to actually prompt children with some of those vocabulary ideas that they're going to translate into writing. But let's imagine now we've completed our workspace. I've got plenty of ideas down here. I now want to transition to writing. This is where lots of students will struggle because quite often we ask them to move between programs or move between pages. And what we really want to do is encapsulate all of those ideas within the same working document. So DocsPlus gives us lots of options here. And I'm going to go back to my menu on the left-hand side, and I'm just going to talk you through the different ways I can now progress with my writing. So I might choose to send this to the document as a diagram. So what that does now is it takes that visual stamp from my workspace and it drops it into my writing page. So now I can use all of my writing functionality of the word processor with the visual reminder from my workspace constantly pinned to the top of my writing page. So that would be one option, great for visual learners, great for children that want that reminder of the organisation and the way our workspace looked. Let's head back to our workspace and look at another option. It might be that rather than sending it as a picture image, I want to send it as text. And what this does now is it takes the vocabulary that we've just gathered and it puts it into my writing page, almost as bullet points, sentence starters, vocabulary reminders. So I can have the visual image, I could have the text reminders as well. And the last option, and one that we find lots of students actually prefer, is what we call a word bar. So what a word bar allows you to do is to take that workspace and have it as a vocabulary prompting bar at the bottom of your writing page. You can choose to filter out some high frequency words. So if you don't want students accessing the ofs and the ands, you can always filter some of those out. And what happens when I press OK is that now at the bottom of my page, I've got my word bar that allows me to have access to all of that vocabulary that I've just gathered in my planning stage to now use in my writing page at the top. What's also worth mentioning is not only do I have the vocabulary bar as a visual prompt, I can also have this speech supported. So if any students would look back at this and perhaps struggle to read some of those words that they've gathered independently, they can click on the word
Germany
and everything is speech supported. So an additional level of support with that speech feedback. So I've got my vocabulary bar now. I'm ready to start building up my writing. Let's see how DocsPlus can interact with me. So I'm going to add in my first sentence. And let's use a word from the word bar.
migration
So I can click that and it will go straight into my writing page. I'm going to add the full stop.
my essays on migration
And you can immediately see that we've got that speech prompt again. So DocsPlus will speak when prompted with a full stop. So a great subtle reminder to use punctuation. DocsPlus isn't talking and probably not putting my full stop in. Also important is not only does it speak to me, it highlights as it reads aloud. And that's really important because we want students to read and track along, to follow what's being spoken, to make that connection between the spoken word and the written word. It's also, of course, really important when I actually make a spelling mistake, which is going to lead me into my next feature, which is going to be the spell checker. So let's add my next sentence. I'm going to say migration can be really important to the economy. So you can see I've made a spelling mistake. I've got the red squiggly underline. At this stage, I might still not be too sure what's wrong with that word. So of course, when I put my full stop in,
migration can be really important to the economy.
there we go. Now I can see it and I can hear it. So I've got that double level of reinforcement. See the error, hear the error. So now what we want students to be able to do is, of course, independently spell check and correct that error. So lots of students will be very familiar with doing a right click next to a word and getting a drop down spell checker with all of their different options there. Again, additional level of support within DocsPlus. Oh, am I back?
You're back now.
Okay, don't know what happened there. So I was just showing you the spell checker and talking you through the different options. So again, if you can read those words on site, fantastic. If you want an additional level of support, the right click
Really
activates
reply
that spell checker, speech feedback. So my chances of correctly finding that word go up enormously when I can hear it as well as see it. So we've looked at the speech feedback, we've looked at the spell checker. Let's look at an additional writing support that I can have working within my document. We've got what we call a voice note recorder. Useful for students who perhaps struggle with working memory or recall, perhaps need help with sequencing and ordering ideas. If any of you have used any of the old style sort of talking tins, audio recorders, this is very much that brought into DocsPlus and the working document. So activate it with the microphone tool along the ribbon, and I can now press the red record button. Migration is the movement of people between countries. I'm going to press stop and done, and that voice note will then go into the page. So if I want to listen back to it, I can click on my red icon. Migration is the movement of people between countries. And then you're going to see that it's stored there for me so I can move on to concentrating on my writing. So voice notes last up to a minute. So I've got a minute talk time on each voice note, and I can have 6 voice notes in my document. So for older children, I might be composing paragraph ideas, I might be dictating sentences that I want to remember, or perhaps I'm just leaving key vocabulary words that I'm going to incorporate in my text. So it's very versatile, but it supports students with that ability to already practice prior to writing. Okay, I've listened to that sentence. I'm now going to write it. And I'm going to write it by using the final support feature within DocsPlus, which is the predictor. So this is useful for students who perhaps struggle with spelling challenges, perhaps start a word and then get stuck, perhaps write quite slowly because the spelling and thinking process they find quite laborious. So the word predictor can be really useful in freeing up that writing process. So you can see that as I activate it, it gives me a word box similar to the spell checker. But of course, because I've not put any words in yet, it's prompting me with some high frequency words. As I add in my letters, it's going to start to suggest words that I might be using. And you can see that it's also suggesting some of the words and phrases that I've got open in my word bar at the bottom of the page.
Migration.
So I can move through this. Okay, I've got clusters of words, so I can put the is and the together. So you can see that I'm quickly building up my sentence using my predictor. Okay, again, clusters of words added into the word suggester.
Between countries.
Again, with the option to listen to them as well. So a useful way of enabling students to move through their writing task at a greater pace than they would do if they're building up these entire words with no additional support. Okay, just finally, it's worth mentioning that there's lots of options that we can personalise and adapt within DocsPlus. The Options tab gives me a whole range of these. So you may well work with students who perhaps would prefer a different setup to the white and black of a laptop. So we have those options built within DocsPlus. I can change the colour of my background. I can change the colour of my text. So if you've got a palette that's more appealing to learners, that can quickly be added. There's also the option to change the speech that you listen to. So we've got different voice options within DocsPlus. You can find the one that you prefer. You can also speed up and slow down the speech as it talks back to you. That's useful for students in finding a voice pattern that they can best connect with. So it's reading back at the optimum speed for them. Not too fast, not too slow. And the final option that's really important is that you don't have to use a keyboard and mouse for DocsPlus. So if you've got students that use eye gaze or that use switch access, everything within DocsPlus can be set up to work with an eye gaze mouse dwell monitor, with one switch or with 2 switches. So for children that are using different access methods, that's not a problem. DocsPlus is completely compatible with those access methods. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, we've looked at the key features of the word processor, day-to-day curriculum support. We've looked at our vocabulary bar, the speech feedback, the spell checker, predictor and voice note recorder. What we're going to move on to now is to start to think about getting to the end of a piece of work, and as a teacher, how I can review and analyse it. Because hopefully with students working independently, it may well be that we just see an outcome. And what we need to understand is how that writing has been crafted together and what level of support students have accessed. So if it got to the end of a lesson and perhaps a student submitted to me a piece of writing that looks like this, I'm just going to put my white and black back on. Here we go. So we've obviously been writing and learning about the Great Gatsby in our lesson. And I've had a student who's worked with DocsPlus, created this piece of writing. Now, as a teacher, I'm seeing the outcome here. And it looks great because I can't see any spelling errors. I can't see any grammar errors. I'm really seeing the end point. But what it might be useful for me to know as I support that learner moving forward is which of the features of DocsPlus they've used to pull that writing together. So what we have is a tool that we call Analytics, which immediately colour codes that writing from the learner. And on the right hand side, it shows me how that writing has been put together. So I can start to see that all of the black text the learner added in independently using their keyboard. The purple words came from the predictor. They started typing them. They used the Q in the predictor box to finish them off. The blue words came from the word bar at the bottom that they were using as their support. And the final option, the red words, came from the spell checker. So I can start to see now the balance of that writing. And if I want to be really detailed, the tabs along the top will show me the information related to each of those different areas. So I want to have a look at this spell check area. And you can see now the word that the learner was trying to write and their original spelling attempt. So before using the spell checker, this is what they were typing into DocsPlus. And I can also then see if they actually listened to the word in the spell checker before they selected it, or if they were able to read it on site. So I can start to use this to find common spelling errors, perhaps grammatical patterns that could then be built into a future teaching programme to provide that continued provision. So analytics is really useful from a teaching perspective to understand how that writing is crafted together. Okay, let's move on. When we were writing, we looked at one of our word bars that we'd created from our workspace. But within DocsPlus, there's already hundreds of ready-made resources for teachers and students to access. So we have an area that's called Learning Grids, which is a great way of finding cross-curricular scaffolded writing support. And you can see that currently there's over 1,000 ready-made resources, and they work across all of our different subject areas. And one of the great things about DocsPlus is that it can become my writing tool in history, in geography, in science and English. So it's not subject specific. It can be very much a cross-curricular support tool. So it might be that today we are taking one of our English literature texts. I can go into my subcategories. You can see some of the options that we've got there for texts that we might be studying. Perhaps today it's Animal Farm, and I can see all of my ready-made options here to support my writer. I could also, as another way of searching, just add a keyword into the search box. So perhaps we're learning about the workhouse today. Type it into the search box, press go. Here's all of the resources linked to that theme. And again, we might have a ready-made workspace where we're going to start to gather our ideas on this mind mapping page. Or it might be that we're going to move on from planning and we're going to think about our writing support. So I might give you a ready-made word bar. So perhaps it would be useful for some of our students to have a grid that looks like this. We call this a quick words word bar because you can see that everything is on one individual slide. So nothing to move between, everything is there for me at a glance. We also have, in terms of word bars and thinking of differentiation, the next level that takes a wider bank of vocabulary, and this time I've sorted it into different categories. So I've got words relating to children and diet and conditions. So broadening the working vocabulary that you've got access to, and perhaps providing your writing with some structure, because I'm almost giving you paragraph ideas that you can build your writing around. And the final option for a word bar would be what we call the A to Z option. And you can imagine what this does from its name. It takes all of the words related to our topic, the workhouse, and this time it puts it into alphabetical order. So again, further extending the choice of words, but categorised this time by alphabetic. So basically, I could be thinking of students working with a simple single grid, a student who perhaps needs a wider vocabulary with some help around writing structure, or a student who can use a diverse working vocabulary, and we've got the A to Z structure. All of these grids that are ready-made can also be edited. So if you want to make some simple changes, perhaps based on learner suggestion or something that's come out of a classroom discussion, we can find our grid, we can go into our edit option, and it starts to look slightly different. And all I need to do now is take out the words that I don't want to use. So I'm going to take cruel out here just by deleting it. And instead of cruel, I'm just going to type in wicked. So literally all I've done is taken out the words we don't want, popped in the words that we do want. When I press go, you can see that it's changed that word there for me, deleting my old word, adding in my new word. So a useful way of personalising it and refining it based on classroom topic, learner choice. So we've looked at the span of grids around a topic, but of course there's also a range of grids that might support genre-specific writing. And we know that students don't always write around a topic. It might be that we're helping them today with a discussion text or an explanation text. So again, within DocsPlus, we have a whole range of writing frames and planners. And you can see some of them here just as I scroll through. I'm just going to pick one of these in a second. I'm just sort of quickly scrolling through so you can get an idea of some of the options that we've got here. I'm going to go to our discussion frame today. So it might be that I'm asking some of my students to craft together a piece of writing to discuss something that we've been studying. And you can see that these look slightly different from the word bars in that what they're providing now is sentence starters as well. So it's a useful way of giving contextual vocabulary to students who might find it difficult to move between different genres of writing. So I've got my sentence starters, I've got my general words and phrases linked to that genre, I've got my connecting words that might be useful, and on my last grid I've got my topic words. And what I particularly like about these is their adaptability. So it might be that with my class today we're discussing why we should all be driving electric cars. So I can simply go into my edit button and start adding some words here that I think might be useful. So just typing the words in. So now when I press go, I've got my sentence starters, my general words, my connectors. But for my class today, they've got their topic words specific to their discussion around driving electric cars. I could change this really quickly tomorrow when we might be discussing why we should all be taking more exercise. and take out those words and add in my exercise words. So you can quickly change and adapt them to the topic that children are studying within the classroom. So Learning Grids is a great one-stop shop for having lots of scaffolded, differentiated, ready-made curriculum support there that we can use within the classroom, potentially as well to support home learning. If I'm asking students to complete writing tasks or planning tasks at home, why not allow them to use DocsPlus as their home learning tool as well? Okay, we've thought about curriculum learning, day-to-day classroom writing. Let's move now then into exam support, because we get asked a lot of questions. Can students use technology? What can they use? How can they use it so it's compatible with their exam board requirements? So as lots of you know, I'm sure, students that have access arrangements around readers and scribes can use human readers and human scribes. But of course, if DocsPlus has become their usual way of working, why wouldn't they use DocsPlus during an exam to replace human reader, human scribe and give them greater independence? So DocsPlus has an exam mode. And what this means is it's password protected and means that exam coordinators' access arrangements can set up DocsPlus so it perfectly matches individual learners' access arrangements. So all I need to do is to enter my password, and on the next page where it says options, I would disable any of the features that we've looked at within DocsPlus that students aren't entitled to use. So let's begin by looking at DocsPlus as a reader, a computer reader. So I'm going to turn off all of the writing support because that's not what students are entitled to. We're going to use it purely as a reader. I'm going to turn exam mode on, and it's going to shut down now anything that I'm not entitled to use. And what you can see now, first of all, at the bottom, DocsPlus tells me it's in exam mode. And secondly, along the top, all of those writing features are now disabled. So as many times as I click on them, they're simply not accessible. So we're using DocsPlus as a reader. Let's quickly open up an exam paper. Again, lots of you are probably familiar with your exam board supplying what we call non-editable PDF papers. So if you're in England, you will receive a non-editable PDF paper that looks very much like this, which you can use with a computer reader. And to use this, students can listen to an individual word, listen to a question, listen to an entire page, listen to the entire paper. It's up to them. And to activate their computer reader, all they need to do is highlight the part that they would like to listen to. So I'm going to listen to this section just here. So I'm going to highlight this part, and along the top, I'm going to activate my speech button.
Use case studies to support your answers where appropriate.
And again, I've got that computer reader voice reading aloud to me, highlighting as it reads. I can listen as many times as I want to. And this really sometimes is the value for lots of students over human readers. If I'm using a computer reader and I'm sitting behind my laptop with my headphones on, I can click this button as many times as I want to listen to that sentence. If I'm using a human reader, I might ask them to read it once. I could potentially ask them to read it twice. By the time I get to 3 times, I might start to feel uncomfortable and embarrassed. So we're really giving students greater independence here in terms of being in control of what they listen to. And again, I want to listen again.
Use case studies to support your answers where appropriate.
And again, remember there, I can choose the voice that I listen to. I can speed it up and slow it down, so I can get that timing working perfectly for me. So that's DocsPlus working as a reader, highlight, listen, it will read aloud. If I want to use it as a scribe, I'm going to go back into exam mode and I'm just going to change some of those options. So let's just put our password back in. And this time we're going to add in our writing support as well, because now I'm using it as scribe and reader and scribe. So let's just pop exam mode back on. Here we go. And what we're now going to do is we'll open up that exam paper again. We know how the reader works. So here's my reader. What I want to do now, because I'm using the scribe as well, the writing support, is I'm going to put this into split page mode. So what that now does is it puts the reader at the bottom of my page, as well as the writing support tools along the top. So now with my reader and scribe entitlement, I can start to answer that question paper using my predictor spell checker, as well as having the reader tool working at the bottom. So any students with a combination of reader, reader scribe, scribe or word processor can use DocsPlus in exam mode. A couple of things that's always worth mentioning: when DocsPlus is in exam mode, it will do an auto save every minute. So it automatically saves everything that students have created. So if my laptop dies, if my battery shuts down, if I have a power cut, I know that I've automatically got that backup saved. And the final thing that's worth noting is when I get to the end of my exam paper and I'm going to want to save and print it, the option is to add on your headers and footers as per your exam board requirements. So lots of exam boards set out how exam papers need to look in terms of candidate information. So that option is built within DocsPlus, so you can add on that information relevant to your exam board's requirements. Okay, we're almost getting to the end. I'm just quickly going to show you the different licenses and options, and then at the end we'll have 10 minutes. If any of you have got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly jump over to our website and talk about our licensing. So first thing to say is that licenses are for 3 years. So you pay a one-off upfront cost, you get a 3-year license back. Licenses can work on laptops, PCs, iPads and Chromebooks. If you're using DocsPlus on laptops, PCs and iPads, those licenses are linked to a specific device. If you're using DocsPlus on Chromebooks, then licenses are linked to user accounts, because as lots of you I'm sure know, Chromebooks are set up to an individual user account. And then we offer a number of license options. So we start with what we call a 1+1 option. So that gives you 2 installations of Clicker. So it might be one on an iPad, one on a laptop. It doesn't matter, you can mix and match those licenses between devices. Then we have 5 licenses. They cost £600. Again, remember these are one-off and you get a 3-year license back. Then we move to 10 licenses, £900. And finally, we have the school-wide license, and that's £3,900, covers an unlimited number of licenses based within your school, also includes home access. So I mentioned students and teachers being able to access DocsPlus at home. So you can do that with the school flexi license, which gives you unlimited options on installations. So I hope today has been useful. Just a quick recap before we head into our questions. So DocsPlus can be used in exam mode. So for students who have reader and scribe requirements, you can use DocsPlus as usual way of working. DocsPlus can also be used as a word processor with speech feedback, spell check, voice notes and word predictor. DocsPlus also comes with a huge bank of ready-made differentiated writing resources linked to the different subject areas. You can also create any of your own grids completely from new. I'm not going to show you that this afternoon, but if you want to make any of the grids yourself, you can simply go over to the new grid creator, use one of our starting templates and simply type in the vocabulary or copy and paste the vocabulary that you want to use. So choose how you'd like it to look, add in the words that you're going to use. I'm going to take some of my climate words again here. I could copy and paste these as well. Here we go. I'm just going to pop a few in here for you so you can see how simple it is to either add in your own text. If you've done an internet search, if you've got some vocabulary in a Word document, just copy and paste it in and DocsPlus will create it into a word bar for you. So the idea is that for struggling, reluctant writers, perhaps students who might be working with small nurture groups, intervention groups, learners with EHCPs, DocsPlus can provide that writing support to encourage not only independence but engagement with writing as well. So I hope it's been a useful overview. We've got sort of 5-10 minutes left. I'm also, while you perhaps think of any questions, going to pop my details onto the screen. So if you've got any more questions, if you want any more information, you could either come back to Abigail, come back to me directly. That's my email address for you on the screen right now. So thanks so much for coming along and we'll see if we've got any questions.
Thank you very much, Katie. That was great. We did have a couple of questions. So somebody said, are there any visuals? I think they'd actually missed the first part where we were looking at the mind mapping bit. Can you put visuals into this part that we're looking at the moment?
Visuals in. So if you want to put any picture images, graphs, tables, just simply find them if you've got them in a folder. Or again, I just did an internet search. You can click and drag them into the word processor, or with the we started off with a workspace, didn't we? And I showed you some visuals. So yeah, you can click and drag them anywhere within the word processor or within any of the grids. Yes.
Brilliant, thank you. And I suppose on the back of that then, is it possible on the word bar at the bottom to use any visuals?
Okay, so if we wanted to, we could potentially, let me just have a look. Let's go into our edit option. So if we wanted to use an image within the actual text at the bottom, no, that would probably be trickier.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then I'm a scientist. My background's in science, so science and maths papers. How's it going to work with a science and a maths paper, reading numbers and being able to type superfix, or you know what I mean, sub numbers, etc.
Yeah, and Fiona's just popped in. Hi Fiona, I remember you from a few years ago to say that sort of the visuals are really sort of more clicker sort of primary level. That's where we can put images everywhere and do anything we want with images. But jumping back to the science and maths question, you probably noticed a couple of things. So when I went into exam mode, there is the option here to either read scientific and mathematical abbreviations or not. So again, the option is there. The DocsPlus as a computer reader will read the exam paper as it's specified by an exam board. So it won't interpret, it will literally read it as a computer would read it. So there is no interpretation. It reads it purely as a number, purely as an equation.
Okay.
So no interpretation. It's basically a straightforward computer reading of what it sees on the screen.
Can I jump in there?
Yes.
I just want to say we've got our first exam, actually real exam using DocsPlus tomorrow, because we've had 3 years of teacher assessed grades using it, but not actual exams. I said to my girls the other day, can you just confirm which exam papers you want the reader for? And they said all of them.
Okay.
So the maths and the science, they still want just the reader.
Brilliant.
So it's good enough for that, I think.
Yeah, and again, you know, sometimes it is learner choice, isn't it? There might be students who are comfortable using a human reader or reading independently in certain subjects, but actually would feel more comfortable using a computer reader in other subjects. So the option is there to use it in every subject. And again, the option's there to read those abbreviations as needed.
Yeah.
And does it cope well with, say there was a table of data and it's got things in, does it cope well with a table?
Yeah, now
it's all right, actually.
Yeah, there we go. There's Fiona. And I mean, hopefully exam boards now are sort of refining PDF papers. When we first started with them a few years ago, we used to have formatting issues and things like that, but they're becoming more and more refined now, and computer readers are working much more compatibly with them.
I know the other one that I'd written is there any way to type directly into a document? So if it was an editable PDF or if you've got a Word document, can you type directly into it? Because I know that my students would not type out question 1, question 3B or wherever they've got to.
Yeah, so DocsPlus has the capacity to, so if you've got a Word document or you've got something where you can answer in the question box, then absolutely. The thing is with exam papers at the moment in England, they are non-editable. If you're in Scotland, for some reason you have editable PDF papers that you can write into. At the moment in England, exam boards only send non-editable PDFs. If you're doing internal exams, sorry?
Edexcel are now doing editable PDFs.
Are they?
Yep.
Fantastic. There we go then. So we've moved a step on. We are moving towards editable PDFs if you use Edexcel.
I think it's Edexcel. It's one of them, whichever one it is.
Yeah. Okay, but that's a step in the right direction, because up until last year we hadn't got any of the English exam boards, so that's brilliant. In which case you'd absolutely type into the paper and you just type your answer in the question box.
Perfect. I suppose then my one that kind of goes with that, if we haven't got an editable paper, so your paper's at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
Let's say I've got a science diagram and I'm being asked to label something. Is there a way to take a screenshot and drop, or are they not able to do that?
No, because it goes back to that non-editable nature of the PDF.
So they'd have to do a handwritten paper alongside their typed at the moment.
At the moment, yeah. I mean, it looks as if we're sort of progressing with exam papers, but that's where we are currently.
Okay. Sounds good to me. I looked at the prices. I know that we looked at the 3,900 for 3 years, but it's for your whole school. If you think about how much it costs to put an adult with a child in an exam, I think you recoup that cost pretty quickly. Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of money, but if we divide that by 3, we're talking £1,300 for 1 year for every child.
Yeah, to potentially use it to potentially replace your human readers. And it's not just the sort of financial cost of human readers. Quite often it's the logistics of finding the room and space to work. If you've got students using DocsPlus as a computer reader, you could have a number of students in one room with their headphones in, or using DocsPlus independently.
That's exactly what we're doing.
There we go. So I can't wait to hear, Fiona, when you're sort of the other side of exams.
If it's total disaster, you will hear quickly.
She'll write you a review
tomorrow.
Yeah, first one tomorrow.
Has anybody got any other questions that they'd like to ask? Apologies to everybody for the beginning part of it. We did have a bit of a glitch with the link to get on, but I'm really pleased that you all managed to see the email or the message that went out and managed to join us. So thank you for that. And apologies to Katie.
And apologies that I managed to hit mute at some point for a few seconds. Don't know what I did there.
I think it was when you switched screens, but don't worry. But no, thank you very much. I think it was useful to kind of see it in action. I think we hear about these things, but we don't always see them in action. So thank you very, very much for joining us this afternoon. I think I've got a much better idea of how it works. Even coming to visit your stand, I don't think I got quite the same idea. And as you say, we've got the clicker is the more visual version, the primary version, but this one is the secondary version, perhaps without the visuals as much. Miss Harvey, yes, this has been recorded. Gavin will pop it onto the YouTube towards the end of the month, though. He needs to just edit out my waffle. But we will get that out for you. He's typing at the moment. Whilst I've got you on, Katie, if have you got anything else you'd like to add? We've got your email address there.
Thank everybody for coming along, and if you've got any questions, want any info, my email address there for you. And I'm going to leave now and enjoy the rest of your session, everybody.
Thank you very much, Katie.
Bye.
Bye bye. I'm going to keep